For more stories like these, go to www.social-tv.co.za, subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on our social mediums.
You're listening to our social newscast with me, Sam Marshall, and today we're talking to Vera Vasilis, who is the Executive Director of FASA, that's the Franchise Association of South Africa. Vera, thank you very much for joining us, and let's get into it. Give us a sense of the Franchising Association in the midst of COVID-19.
Well, the Franchise Association specifically has been dealing with inquiries from not only the franchise companies that are members of the association, but also the public at large. So it's also been lobbying government continuously to try and reopen, with particular reference the casual dining sectors and of course the health and beauty sectors. So we've been very busy in trying to give information, guide people through to help, specifically information on emergency funding and various other questions that we deal with on a day-to-day basis.
But the franchising industry is quite large. It's not just restaurants. It's just not health and beauty. Just give us a sense of how big an industry are we talking about, Vera?
So in 2019, Sanlam did a franchisor and franchisee survey, and according to the information that they presented to us, there were around about 846 franchise systems and around about 42,000 franchised outlets. And the industry provided approximately 500,000 permanent jobs. And that, of course, excludes all the part-time and seasonal opportunities that the industry also offers in terms of job opportunities. So it contributes, according to that study, just below 13% to our country's GDP. And it comprises around about 14 different business sectors. So if you think about retail, fast food, casual dining, property, personal services, I mean, the list just goes on.
We're finding ourselves in the level 3 lockdown, or we're going into an advanced level 3 lockdown. We saw the announcement by the president that some of the restrictions would be lifted, especially around the health and beauty and the restaurant industry. But what other franchise industry aspects is still affected by the lockdown?
Well, I think the most important aspect at this moment in time is consumer confidence and job losses, because that has a direct impact on disposable income. So the franchise sectors that have been trading or started trading again from the 1st of June reported around about a 40% recovery of sales, which is, of course, a huge concern. And we're particularly worried about the longevity and the ability of these franchised outlets to stay afloat over the next 4 to 6 months if their sales don't recover further. So there appears to be a certain level of paranoia amongst consumers that are worried about going out and going about their business as the previous normal. And that is very worrying, because it has a severe direct negative impact on the business's ability to recover sales. And as you know, without the turnover coming in, they're going to find it very hard pressed to meet their monthly financial commitment.
Vera, how worried should we be if they are reporting a 40% return of sales? A lot of these businesses are still sitting on the precipice of potentially closing their doors. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes. So franchised outlets that are established, so for example, businesses that have been running for at least 5 years and longer, would have had an opportunity to build up some cash reserves that they can rely on to carry them over difficult times. But the franchised outlets that are younger than 5 years or newly established may not be able to find the cash reserves to sustain them over the coming months. So we are worried that as time goes by, we might see a further fallout of businesses that cannot reopen, or that eventually just succumb to the enormous level of debt that they've taken on. So the association is particularly concerned about this issue where a franchised outlet may have a deferred payment plan in place with, example, the landlord, with example, their own franchise company. They may still have a loan on the business, and they may have a payment plan in place with their bank. So, of course, if the turnovers don't recover to reasonable levels, they simply won't be able to meet those payment plans that they've renegotiated. And that's where we believe we may see some businesses going under in perhaps 4 to 6 months' time.
Now, Vera, as the Franchise Association of South Africa, you talked about that concern. When we talk about franchisees, are we talking about franchisees that have opened less than 5 years?
Well, both really, because if you look at a franchise company, of course, they have their own financial commitments similar to what a franchisee would have. So we are concerned on both sides, both with regards to newly established franchise brands as well as newly established franchised outlets. So irrespective of perhaps the industry that they're operating in or the brand that they're associated with, young businesses that have not been able to establish themselves and have grown financially independent, those are the businesses that may not see, the year end in terms of keeping their doors open.
I want to have a chat about the code in a couple of minutes, but I just want to understand from the Franchise Association perspective, how are you facilitating, or have you seen a request to facilitate a dialogue, a conversation between the franchise brand and the franchisee?
Well, fortunately, we did a little dipstick survey a couple of weeks ago, and I think 73% of franchise companies said that they have managed to come to an agreement with franchisees. So we are reasonably comfortable that franchisors have been able to talk to their franchisees and have appear to have found common ground. So we haven't really had many issues that we had to deal with where franchisees made us aware or complained about their franchisors not being willing to talk to them or negotiate with them or support them. So from our perspective, franchisors have really stepped up to the plate in every respect. And of course, there may be, problems here and there that we're not aware of, but largely speaking, from the information that we've received, franchisors have been able to come to an agreement with franchisees. And again, it would vary from brand to brand, industry to industry. And of course, each franchisee's individual financial standing would have an impact on that payment plan and the negotiations around that.
What you're really saying to me is that South Africans, these brands, they understand the nature of COVID, and so they're willing to communicate with each other. How, as an association, have you managed to then talk to, for example, the South African Restaurant Association, who says that at the current rate we're looking at potentially hundreds of thousands of potentially unemployed people, as opposed to other businesses that have been saying exactly the same? How are you guys communicating with each other? What's the dialogue like around the table?
Well, everybody has really been taking hands. The association has been in regular contact with the South African Shopping Centre Council. We've been in regular contact with the Small Business Institute, with BUSA, with Business for South Africa, RASA. So all the different industry bodies have been working together and have been communicating. So, for example, where we made lobbying submissions to Minister Patel, we shared that some of those petitions with Business for South Africa as well as the motor retail industry. So we've worked with them as well. So we've really, across the different business sectors and industry bodies, we have worked together and we've shared information as and when issues have come to hand.
How do we get consumers back into the various businesses? How do we instill that confidence so that we can move that dial from 40% to maybe 70, 80% over the next couple of months?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I believe it's going to take time. And of course, time is one factor that we as businesses don't have. But consumers over time, I think, will regain their confidence. So the most important thing right now would be for any business owner, whether it's a casual dining restaurant or whether it's a health and beauty business, is to make visible safety procedures very much aware, make the consumers aware of the various steps and the action points that have been put in place by each business owner to safeguard consumers and, of course, their own staff. So as long as it's visible, it gives consumers a sense of real security that there's proper measurements in place in that business establishment. But I don't believe that consumers will overnight become confident to resume their normal consumer behavior just by being able to see that safety measures are being implemented. Unfortunately, I believe it's going to take a little bit of time for consumers to fully regain their confidence.
Is it a fair assessment of what you're saying then, Vera, that we should expect more businesses to close over the next 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 weeks as consumers try and rebuild that confidence? Are you expecting to see more businesses close?
Unfortunately, we do. So, as I referred to the financial capabilities of each business owner and their access to emergency funding and the various factors that could help them through the next couple of months. So in the absence of all of those measures that they could take to assist them financially, those are the businesses that would probably close their doors. And the other issue is, if you look in the marketplace, the level of retrenchments that are being carried out by corporates, that is another concern because people have lost their jobs. The disposable income is just disappearing as we speak. So while consumers may want to return to their normal consumer habits, they may not simply have the financial ability to do so. So that's why I'm saying, apart from consumer confidence with regards to COVID, there's also the issue of job losses that may completely dampen down the return of pre-COVID sales levels.
One last question before we jump to the code quickly. In terms of the regulations around getting back into some kind of workflow, in some venues you'll see, and I remember this, and you can please correct me if I'm wrong, but we know that at some point there was this idea that only 50 people per venue at a time. And in certain shops now, when you walk through malls, you'll know that's only 5 people at a time in a store or allowed into a store. Do you see these kind of precautions affecting sales?
Well, yes and no. It's a little bit of 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. Because if one had to just throw open the doors and allow any number of consumers to come in, I think they would completely lose their confidence in terms of the safety precautions that they would expect in an establishment. And on the other hand, of course, then that limits the business owner's ability to turn sales. So it is a very difficult situation, but the regulations are there, and as business owners, we are compelled to comply with those regulations. So unfortunately, it's not up to the individual business owner to decide how many people he or she is going to allow into their business. they would have to strictly comply with the regulations that have been set down, and it definitely limits the business owner's ability to turn sales and grow their sales. But they also can't scare consumers off by simply behaving in a way that doesn't instill safety, the confidence with regards to consumer safety.
Yeah, so these businesses are between a rock and a very hard place.
Most certainly. I agree with you there.
One of the other things, and I think this is good news, I know we've been talking about the negative effects of COVID on your industry, but some good news is that you have finally asked the industry to reflect on some work that you guys have been doing for years around the industry code in terms of the Franchise Association. Talk to us a little bit about that very quickly.
So the Franchise Association has had a code of ethics for the last 40 odd years that the association has been in existence. And we started lobbying government many years ago to set that down as an industry code to ensure that not only accredited members of the association, but all franchises would be compelled to behave in an ethical manner. But we've had our battles up and down with government. They came back to us at some point and asked us to revise the code so that we have an alternate dispute resolution in place, and that it also includes the code of ethics per se that the association sets down for its members. So we included all of the information as requested by government and resubmitted it back to them. And fortunately now, as you said, it's been published on the DTI's website for public comment. So we're extremely excited and grateful that the government has decided to take that step, because the association for many, many years has made it very, very public that we believe ethical franchising must be enforced in South Africa, as it's being done in so many countries around the world. So currently, as it stands in South Africa, anyone can get up in the morning, start selling franchises, and 2 or 3 weeks disappear with people's money, and very little can happen to them. So with an industry code like that is set down, the moment anyone calls themselves a franchise or starts selling franchises, they would be required to comply with the requirements of such an industry code. So that's why we feel very happy and excited that the government has taken this step.
Once this code is enacted and it's passed into law, what would that process then look like for somebody who has been unethically treated?
Well, obviously, there's a long response to that question, but the short of it really is that the code makes provision for the establishment of a franchise industry ombud, which means that anyone in the industry could then lodge a complaint with the ombud, and that whole process would be done free of charge to the complainant. And the ombud would then examine the behavior of the party, look at the complaint at hand, and the ombud would be able to mete out penalties, and those would be enforceable by law. So it's meaningful recourse for complainants at a very affordable level.
Vera, thank you very much for your time. And hopefully, as the lockdown restrictions lift, we can save many more of these franchisees.
Absolutely. What did I say? From your lips to God's ears.
Yeah, that's how it goes. Vera, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for the opportunity. Go well.
That's Vera Vasilis. She is the executive director of FASA, which is the Franchise Association of South Africa.